It's Spoilerin time, folks, and the gist of it is we spend a lot of time on our other show, Cordkillers, figuring out how to watch things, all the services and everything. But then we watch them and we want to talk about them. So that's what this is. This week we are going to talk about Picard, season 3, episode 8, Ted Lasso, season 3, episode 4, and Succession, season 3, episode 3. I'm Tom Merritt. He is Brian Brushwood.
Tom, I don't normally make a big thing of throwing you an audible and demanding things on the spot, but what say this week, for the first time, we just start with hands down the best hour of television that has appeared in years.
Well, there was no Johnny Carson this week. So instead, we'll start with Succession, season 3, episode 3. Brian, captivating. Doesn't even do justice to this episode of Succession.
Here's the secret to great magic. Put everything in front of everybody in such a way that it's there the entire time, and then let them way too late realize what's happening. They pulled off a very, very good narrative magic trick. Everything about this show, everything about the characters, everything about the writing, everything about the performances led me to believe this was more trickery horse apples. Instead, it was an astonishingly accurate representation of the way we deal with real death in the 21st century.
The quietness, the remoteness, the denial, all of it.
At the risk of making things not fun, I experienced my brother's death over the phone. I called our friend Mike TV and I said, it's been a while since we've heard from my brother. Will you check on him? He's like, yeah, he's just down, a few doors down. And then I experienced the radio play of Mike TV discovering my brother's dead body. This was that. However, because they have done so much trickery, so much shenanigans, Logan Roy is so feral and feisty that they led us down the garden path of believing that this was more horse apples. And then they revealed the truth. Nope, it's exactly what it looks like.
And you're right there with Roman. You're like, but they haven't called it. A doctor hasn't called it. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, with this show, there's a chance that he's the amazing Logan Roy who cheated death. They'd given him up for dead, and there's a whole plot scenario built around that where he's angry that they gave up on him. And I was spinning that whole tale in my head, even as I knew it wasn't true. Right. Even yeah.
Well, and part of me wants to go back and double check because there's two moments they showed the chest compressions. The first moment, I could swear, I'm certain it was intentionally set up to be this way. I could swear that it looked an awful lot like somebody was working on a practice dummy and that it was an intentional, oh, I get it. This is all a fake out. Notice how they're not showing Logan Roy. And then, 40 minutes in, it's like, nope, that's his actual dead body. And here are all of his minions figuring out how to carve up the corpse of his empire. This might have been one, if not top 10, top 20 or 30 greatest television moments I've ever seen. Full stop. Is that overstating it, Tom?
No, I really would have to sit down and think okay, where would I slot it in? But that's akin to starting to draft the statement just in case he's really dead, because we all think he is. It was one of the greatest episodes of television. I don't know where it slots in. It doesn't matter. It was amazing. It was amazing in multiple ways. The choice to treat Logan Roy with respect so much that we only see him after he has collapsed once. We kind of see the edge of his face a couple of times, but there's one time where they put the phone down next to his face where we see his face. The rest of the time, you're having the experience that they are having on the boat, which is you're just getting everything filtered through Tom and you don't know what's really going on. Apparently, they had the guy who plays Tom on the phone in London calling in. So he's literally on the phone with them when they were shooting that part on the boat, and they shot in real time. They shot it like a play.
Right.
They just ran in real time.
Well, and because they shot on film, they could only do 10. This is, by the
There
way,
was a whole
Tom,
thing.
the
Yeah,
first time I've watched the featurette after a
Yeah.
Succession episode, and
So
I
you got that story about
I mean,
them.
that's something. The fact that they laid out the fact that you could only do 10 minutes of film at a time, so we had multiple cameras, each one was loaded at all times.
That's Hitchcock level stuff right there. Yeah.
Well, and it's also a new story that I can't think of anywhere else I've seen, and especially in a show that prides itself on being a bit of a cartoon of it's essentially Arrested Development, but what if it was serious?
Mhm.
That was a very real moment. Bryce, talk me through what it was like for your experience, and at what point you suspected things, and at what point you realized things.
I definitely had the same feeling of like this is gonna be a feint, right? This is gonna be a play. This is a move by Logan. We just had him confront the kids last episode in the karaoke room, and I kept having this, even though we were cutting back and forth between the plane and the kids on the boat. I was there with them mentally of like, are you sure? Are you sure? Because there's just so much doubt. The characters and the viewers have all of this doubt around the Roys, especially Logan.
You don't take Brian Cox out of the story in episode 3, do you?
Right.
Do you?
Well, especially in such a totally unceremonious, quiet, off-camera way. That would be the dumbest thing ever. Which, of course, was
Is it dumb?
Exactly why it was brilliant.
Yeah.
Is it dumb? I mean,
No.
it's
it is
You're
objectively brilliant.
your
But it's
knee-jerk
brilliant
instinct is like, well,
because
they'd never do that.
Yeah, we would never believe they would do that. Yeah.
Yeah. It was almost. I thought it was maybe a little respectful, almost, to try to not give us the image of him dying on the toilet. Like, he died on the toilet. That could have been. You could have hung that up. You could have had Connor saying that every 5 minutes just to be like as a joke bit. But they really, really took this very, very gravely and seriously in a way that I respected. Which meant not showing him dying on the crapper like a Game of Thrones character.
Well, and
They also, because they had to break into the toilet, right?
Yeah.
So who knows how long. There was a little confusion about whether he was still breathing or not when they first called, and then he wasn't breathing, and it became, progressively more and more clear what was happening. There's also the fact that they've been seeding this. Remember, he's been having moments where he's like, oh, I started to feel faint. No, I'm fine. Yeah, it was just a little pain. Like, this has been coming on and he ignored it, which is what happens. People don't want to think that that's what's happening. And so they ignore it. And I mean, it happened to my grandfather, and he died on the toilet, exactly the same way. A little older than Logan is in this, but it's nonetheless, this was all very real. And any of us who have experienced a death in our family.
Remarkably, it was real in a way that they managed to slip it underneath the radar, where it's like, well, I mean, it can't be. Yeah, yes, this is what it is in a real world, and then all of a sudden, turns out to be really real.
Yeah. Just an incredible episode of television.
How do you feel that Connor and Willis still got married at the end? They basically eloped once everyone left.
To be honest, that rose my respect for Connor as a character like 100-fold.
Really? Why? How can you? Not why, but can you walk me through that?
Connor has been the entire series a clown who is slightly outside of the real Roy's. And in that moment, I feel like I saw Connor as a man, and dare I say, somebody who, as a independent third-party voter, might consider voting for president because, his father died, and he had a frank conversation with his girl, and they agreed, if this isn't love, it's something, and they wanted to go forward, and they did it without ceremony, without trying. Because keep in mind, like the whole purpose of the wedding was to be a spectacle, and instead they did it quietly. And I feel like we saw Connor really evolve, or at least presented Connor as an evolved person in that moment. And I like that a lot. Also, hats off. Hey, Emmys, let's say we make a new category. The best script that never finishes one sentence. That goes to this show.
Yeah, it's tight from top to bottom, but also ad-libbed, including the hug at the end. One thing I read today was that the moment after the press conference, or maybe right before, I can't remember now for sure, the four characters, the brothers and sisters, hugged each other naturally. Like that was not in the script; they just did it, and it was beautiful. The other thing is they filmed beyond what we saw at the end, where we just see Kendall kind of staring as the hospital, or as the ambulance is loaded. They have footage of Kendall walking off, and the ambulance driving off, and you're just left with an empty tarmac. They decided it was more powerful to go with Kendall's performance there, which I'm not going to second guess. But I kind of like that idea of it just ending with everything driving off. Maybe it feels too much like a series finale to do that, but I like that idea.
Yeah, Bryce and I were talking. We try really hard not to talk about things before the show so that we could save it for the show, but we ended up talking about who's a method actor and who's not. And the guy who plays Kendall is very method, as you could tell, because he's clearly or being somebody else in the featurette afterwards or whatever. But in the featurette, I really dug Kieran Culkin talking about how he had a hard time, that was a 2-week shoot. So for 2 weeks, he had to live in that one awful moment, and he had a hard time letting it go, and it was very exhausting for him. And I believe it. It shows. I mean, especially for Roman as a character, somebody who is, mostly a coward, but also fairly honest, but also, I don't know, man. I need to watch it again. And that may be the highest compliment I can pay to a TV program.
The other thing is, this makes for a compelling final run of episodes. It is truly Succession now. This is no longer who's going to take over for Dad, who's he going to nominate. This is who is going to claw the title back. It is now all bets are off. There is no stabilizing influence at the center. There's no one to overthrow. It's an empty throne, and we've got the War of the Roses.
There was definitely, at that 40-minute mark where I realized, oh, wait, no, they're definitely for reals killing off Logan Roy. I thought to myself, instinctively, I thought, oh, Knives Out.
Yeah.
It's coming now. No, everybody for themselves.
Including people who were about to be fired, like Jerry, right? There's a scene in the later this season on Succession where I think it's Roman makes a remark that half the people in this room were going to get fired, but they didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, meanwhile, Tom, whoopsie doodle, wrong bet, my guy. All of a sudden, being the cool nephew gets you nothing.
Yeah. And Greg being on the outs with Tom.
Greg
still putting
definitely
my
appeared
bet on
to. Greg seemed to be the first person in the entire episode who was making a play, a soft play to be sure, but he was just like, I am very sad as a member of this family. like that was Greg attempting to play the game that we've seen everybody else play.
The most likely source of the press leak.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, shoot. I didn't even think about that part.
If not him, it's from him, right? He said something a little too loud. Someone overheard. Totally.
He may not have done it on purpose, but he certainly had reporter friends.
I didn't know the Newsweek was right there. Hire me for ADR.
How do we feel about the kayfabe that the LA Times played?
Oh, right. This? I'm glad I meant to bring that up. Horrible. I absolutely hated it.
Really?
Can we set this up for folks if they didn't see it?
The LA Times published Sunday evening in their entertainment section a faux obituary for Logan Roy. They published that today, maybe. I'm not mad at all. That's a spoiler. That's a huge spoiler because the headline says Logan Roy dies.
Hold on. So this came out before the show?
This came out immediately at the end of the show. So if you watched it in real time, at the end, the LA Times published the obituary. In the 1990s, maybe that's fine. All right. But in this world where everybody starts things at different times, I don't know. It just really bothered me that they went and put that, because the reviews of this episode on Variety today just make vague statements about like the shocking, thing in succession. So if you know, but if you're not, you're not spoiled. That just seemed, I don't know, seemed crappy to just put that right there in the headline.
Tom,
masterfully written. Love the concept, love the idea. Just didn't like the timing.
We've been doing versions of the show for coming up on 14 years, Tom. In general, you tend to be I don't understand the problem with spoilers. It happened. It's out. It's news. Whatever.
No,
they literally put it in the headline.
Mischaracterization of my position. I have been the person who says we are oversensitive about spoilers, and that the idea that saying that there's a boat in this episode is not a spoiler. Saying the thing that surprisingly happened in an episode minutes after it's ended, before a lot of people have watched it. Yeah, no, I'm there's a line, and that's on the other side of my line.
Cordkillers@gmail.com. That's really interesting because now granted, I did not experience it the way you experienced it, which was out of order, I assume.
No, I didn't experience it out of order. I'm just saying it was there like the minute I finished the show, and I didn't put a link into our group chat because I wasn't sure if Brian had finished watching it, and I didn't want to spoil it for him.
Yeah, and you were correct because I was a few minutes behind you guys, but I don't know. I rather liked that they did that. I liked that they used enough soft language to indicate the fictional character.
Oh yeah, I saw people like, "Oh, this is about abuse of the press and fake news." I don't have any of those objections. It was in the entertainment section. Logan Roy, clearly not a real person. I'm not worried about any of that. And like I said, I thought it was well written. I thought it was well done. I just didn't like that they put that in the headline on their website and on their app at a time when you wouldn't do that in a normal story about that.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I've finally gone off the deep end into spoiler time.
Do you think the idea was to like make it more of a push notification thing? Like people would watch live, and then suddenly, at the end of the episode, once we're really pretty sure, like I could see a world where someone thought that is what would happen. Yeah,
but absolutely what they did.
Like that's part of like the reality in your television screen has bled out into your other screen.
Yeah. I like the concept. Yeah, I really do.
But there's no way to know who has watched or is watching it live. Worrying about like West Coast feed, and they mentioned in the chat.
Oh, good point, G. James B. Yeah, because on HBO Max you're not watching it West Coast feed, but if you are actually old fashioned, watching it only on TV at a time when you're only going to get it 3 hours later than the rest of the rest of the country. Yeah.
Good episode. I really can't say much more than that.
That's Succession, Season 3, Episode 3. Let's talk Ted Lasso, Season 3, Episode 4, The Big Game. They meet up with Nate the Great, and they lose.
Tom, you suggested that if I ran out of time, I jumped to the end. I didn't. And to be honest, I was like, I cannot imagine that Tom would tell me anything that would ruin this episode for me. And finding out just now that they lost, I don't believe took anything away from how good this show is. I love the fact that Ted Lasso is asking himself the question of like, am I a mess? And the frank discussion from, you know, his friends with benefits partner of like,
Sassy.
Sassy Smurf, of basically saying like, no, this is what it looks like to go through, you know, starting again and so on. No, it's great. It's great. I liked also, keep in mind, I'm only halfway through. I just now found out traumatically that they lose. But the Roy Kent and Jamie friendship, the training stuff, all of that really resonates with me. I really like Jamie's redemption arc, and I guess also Roy Kent's redemption arc in terms of becoming more of a human, a charismatic person who would participate in the Diamond Dogs.
Now, there's also Rebecca questioning whether Ted is firing people up enough. She's like, I really want to win. I need you to want to win. There's the video of Nate on security cameras coming in and ripping the Believe sign, which everybody thinks Ted should use to fire up the team, and he doesn't. So there's a piper to pay on the fact that Ted did not use all the tools one might use to fire up his team for this game, and they lost. That I think he is going to have to pay in the next episode.
But
Maybe, and I haven't finished
with Rebecca particularly.
But there's a moment in, of all things, this is a dumb parallel, but if you remember the 1984 movie Red Dawn with Patrick Swayze, you know, Russians invade Colorado of all places, and there's one moment that a veteran sees one of the Wolverines carving in another notch on his rifle for another, you know, Russian that he killed. And he says, all that fire is going to burn you up, I think he says, or some version of that. But basically, what he was expressing was hate is a powerful motivator, but it eats you out from the inside. And so the fact that Ted Lasso would not use hate as a motivating force, I mean, again, we get back to that weird Jedi thing. It's like he's being a proper Jedi while Nate is being a Sith Lord.
Yeah, and the Sith win. And Ted Lasso is the story of why, yes, doing the right thing doesn't always mean immediate results, but you win in the long run. It's the right thing in the long run. That's what the season is going to tell us. But at this point in the story, Ted did what he thought was right, and it didn't work. And you saw the team frustrated, playing dirty, getting angry. You know, they tried to get him angry at the halftime, and it didn't work.
But they did use that video. I mean, the video is why they really screwed up that second half, because they all got super angry and played really dirty.
Right.
Like, I mean, it's telling that at the end, Ted is talking to Beard and Roy, saying like, "Hey, you know what? Like, you're not going to do that again." Like, it was very.
Maybe you're right. Maybe the lesson is already learned by the end of this episode.
Maybe, but
yeah.
But I think there's also an argument to saying like, well, if you showed them the day before, maybe they would have put that energy into the right thing. Yeah. So it's complicated a bit.
When he was texting his therapist, did you notice the date was September 2019?
No. Oh no.
Remember, I have been saying like, well, no, they can't win. The story is going to be about them not getting relegated. And y'all had some fairly reasonable objections to why that wouldn't be the case. And it should be that they're making a play for the title. Because Richmond never actually wins and hasn't. I have a feeling this season's going to get interrupted before it finishes.
I mean, if that would be a way to do it, right? It's like, oh, we're locking up we're Brexiting. We're doing the whole thing. Get out of here, Ted Lasso. Go back. And that's your reason to
So they'll
leave.
just stop playing. They'll stop playing games.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
That would be surprising to me because I'm already surprised at how much I don't care to be reminded of the pandemic. Like there's certain bits of media where it's like, well, that clearly was during the pandemic, and I'm never happier for having seen people distanced wearing a mask or whatever.
I mean, but what about the idea of that being the conclusion of the Ted Lasso series?
That would be surprising to me because it would be them engaging and reminding us of hey, our show, the reason it's popular is because we were very positive during a really crap bag of a time, you know.
I'll be interested to see how they handle it. Maybe those dates were just random and I wasn't meant to pay attention to them. But if the season follows the normal pattern that the season follows, and 2019 is when these games are happening, then we're going to see games stop happening, which is what actually happened.
Yeah. Wild.
Yeah. Richmond and West Ham are going to play each other again, right? Like,
Yes.
like having that
assume
whole
so,
dirty
yeah.
second half is just so they can say, asterisk this whole one. We're going to come back to these two
Right.
fighting, and that'll be the finale, right?
For sure.
Like, yeah. Cool. I solved it.
All right. Anything else on Ted Lasso?
I mean, I made it halfway through and then we ran out of time and here I am.
All right. That is Ted Lasso season 3, episode 4. Let's talk Picard, The Next Generation, season 8, which is season 3, episode 8. They take back the ship in this episode through a cunning plan, thanks to Data. And the entire Next Generation crew unites at the end and sits down in the ready room, just like they used to. And Brian and I cry.
Yeah, press release. New headline, Brian to Picard. Knock it off. You're not allowed to make me cry. I don't want to cry watching Picard of all things.
What the heck?
I also definitely cried watching Picard. It was great. It's a good show. And that moment when, like, you know, I cottoned on pretty early on to what Data was doing is, you know, let me hand you each of my memories. I'm like, wait a minute. If Laura has all of his memories, does it, you know, it seems to me like Data has a bigger data set. And sure enough, I was 100% right. Didn't stop me from crying. This show's great. I'm very happy for it. It's awesome.
Yeah. I really like this episode too. I'm actually incredibly curious to find out what happens when Jack Crusher opens the big red door. I don't have any theories. Do you?
No, I don't. I was pleased that they kept the suspense pretty short on Jack Crusher. Like, what's weird about him? Like 1 or 2 episodes later, it's like, he has psychic powers. I'm like, well, that's something we've not explored in the Star Trek universe, outside of the whole Betazoid thing,
Yeah,
right? And then it's like, he uses them. That's that. Let's go. Now he's unpacking trauma. Cool, I guess. Yeah, let's go. I rather loved. I'm normally not a fan of when people try to walk back where characters ended up. And so when we first saw Riker and Troy, was it Troy? Yeah, Riker and Troy, they were living in idyllic, you know, rustic lifestyle. And on paper, I would not be a fan of them walking that back, but I felt it. I believed it. Also on paper, I would not like Worf becoming a hippie, but I like that too. So, I mean, Tom, I tried really hard to come up with anything to complain about, and I didn't have much. I had a lot of fun.
I think what you're pointing out is one of the geniuses of this is they are leaning into the nostalgia, but also not shortening on the growth. So Riker is not as bold and impetuous as he used to be, but he's still Riker, just in a bit slower and older body. Like you said, Worf has changed, as people do. Riker and Troy, their relationship has evolved. Geordi has gotten old and responsible and boring, but he's still friends with Data.
That was the moment that got me to cry. Just straight up, Geordi and Data, flatly expressing their feelings for each. Oh, I can't even.
Which, if you haven't seen that build over the course of The Next Generation, as I have multiple times, maybe doesn't strike you as hard. But if you have, it's like, that's what reunion episodes are for, right there. And them gathering around in the ready room to figure out, like, okay, what do we do next? And Deanna's like, well, I'm a counselor. Let me talk to Jack. That's my role, which is what you would do. I'm with you, man. There was not anything to complain about. Maybe it dragged a little at the earlier part when I was like, come on, just take over the ship already. But that wasn't bad at all.
Yeah, I the only point I tuned out a little bit was the first of all, Worf's appearance felt unearned. It was just kind of out of nowhere, but whatever, I didn't care at that point. But the they drug out the execution song and dance.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I mean, I just love what they're doing this season, and that's a phrase I never thought I would say about the series Picard.
That is Picard Season 3, Episode 8. So, folks, get ready. Next week, same three again. Succession, Season 3, Episode 4. Ted Lasso, Season 3, Episode 5. Picard, Season 3, Episode 9. A triple of season 3s that we're going to talk about. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for supporting us on Patreon. You get these episodes early. You get them packaged easier if you are a patron, as well as a bunch of other perks. So go check that out, like After Talk at patreon.com/Cordkillers. We'll spoil you next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.